The discovery that changed everything. The unexpected signal. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Thexlar of the Varinian Empire presented their shocking discovery. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he addressed the assembled representatives of 37 spacefaring civilizations. Honored delegates, his translator device hummed, 3 cycles ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something impossible. A signal. Not from any known civilization, but from a region we have always believed to be empty, the dark sector. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The dark sector was a massive region of space, spanning thousands of light years, that had been quarantined for over 10,000 years. No civilization dared enter it. Ancient records from the first peoples warned of dangers that lurked within, though the exact nature of these dangers had been lost to time. But that's not the strangest part, Thexlar continued, his scales shifting color with agitation. The signal, it's a distress call. And it's in a language we've never encountered before. It calls itself, human. First Contact Protocol. Captain Vexana of the research vessel Eternal Curiosity had volunteered immediately. As a Kellian explorer, she had spent her entire career pushing boundaries and investigating mysteries. Her 6-limbed form moved gracefully through her ship's bridge as her crew prepared for the historic mission. Captain, her science officer, Dravik, called out. I'm detecting the signal source. It's coming from a moon orbiting a gas giant in the Omega-7 system. But there's something strange, the moon is generating an artificial atmosphere. Vexana's antenna twitched with interest. Creating and maintaining an artificial atmosphere required enormous energy and technological sophistication. Whatever these humans were, they weren't primitive. As they approached the moon, the crew gasped collectively. The surface was covered in massive structures, not cities exactly, but something else. Enormous domes connected by vast networks of tubes and bridges. But everything looked old. Ancient, even. Many structures showed signs of damage, as if from some great catastrophe. I'm receiving a transmission, the communications officer announced. Audio and visual. It's coming from the largest dome structure. The main screen flickered to life, and for the first time, the crew of the Eternal Curiosity saw a human. The last guardian. The creature on the screen was bipedal, standing roughly 2 meters tall. It had only 2 arms, 2 legs, and a single head, a remarkably simple body plan compared to most sapient species. Its skin was a dark brown color, and it had hair on its head that had turned mostly gray. But what struck Vexana most were its eyes, 2 forward-facing organs that held an expression she couldn't quite read. Was it sadness? Relief? Hope? Thank you for responding to our distress call, the human said, its voice surprisingly deep and resonant. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I suppose I am the last guardian of humanity's legacy. Guardian? Vexana asked carefully. Where are the rest of your people? Marcus's face showed an expression the translator identified as grief. Gone. All gone. I'm the last one. I've been alone here for, well, I've lost count of the years. Maybe 300? Maybe 4? Time gets difficult to track when you're the only one left. The crew exchanged shocked looks. 400 years alone? How was that possible? Most species had lifespans of 50 to 80 standard years. Dr. Webb, Vexana began carefully, how have you survived so long? Marcus gave a short, bitter laugh. Medical technology. Cybernetic enhancements. Cloning replacement organs. My people developed ways to extend life significantly. I'm probably over 500 years old now, by your calendar. I've forgotten what it feels like to be truly mortal. The warning from the past. Over the following days, as Vexana and her crew explored the human facility, Marcus told them humanity's story. It was unlike anything in the Galactic Council's historical records. We evolved on a planet called Earth, Marcus explained as he led them through halls filled with advanced technology. A beautiful world, full of life and diversity. We were curious creatures, always pushing, always exploring. Maybe too curious. He stopped before a massive sealed door, its surface covered in warning symbols. We developed faster-than-light travel about 2,000 years ago, by your galactic calendar. We explored, we discovered, and we thrived. We even made contact with a few other species, peaceful encounters, mostly. But then we found something in the dark sector, Marcus continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. We called it the Void Anomaly. It was a region of space where physics seemed to work differently. Our scientists were fascinated. Against all warnings, they built a research station to study it up close. Dravik's tentacles coiled nervously. What happened? Marcus's eyes grew distant. They woke something up. Something old. Something that had been sleeping between the stars for eons. We never fully understood what it was, some kind of extra-dimensional entity, perhaps. It spread through our colonies like a plague, but it wasn't a disease. It was consuming reality itself. Everywhere it touched, the laws of physics would break down. Matter would stop following its normal rules. Time would flow backward or sideways or not at all. Humanity's sacrifice. How did you stop it? Vexana asked, though she dreaded the answer. We didn't stop it, Marcus replied quietly. We contained it. Barely. Every human colony, every space station, every ship, we coordinated the largest evacuation in our history. We pulled back to the dark sector's boundaries. And then, we detonated every FTL drive we had simultaneously. Millions of ships, all at once. The crew stood in stunned silence as the magnitude of the sacrifice sank in. The explosion created a barrier, Marcus continued. A wound in spacetime itself, unstable and dangerous, but effective. The entity couldn't cross it. But the barrier is maintained by specialized generators that need constant monitoring and adjustment. That's why I'm still here. Someone had to make sure it never breaks free. He turned to face Vexana directly. That's why we sent the distress signal now. The generators are failing. I've kept them running for centuries, but I'm just one person. Parts are breaking faster than I can repair them. In maybe 5 years, maybe 10, the barrier will collapse. And that thing will be free to spread across the galaxy. The choice. Vexana felt the weight of Marcus's words settling on her shoulders. Why didn't your people warn the rest of the galaxy? Why keep this secret? Marcus's expression grew even more somber. We tried. In the beginning, we sent out warnings, explained what we'd found. But we were a young species. Nobody took us seriously. They thought we were exaggerating or trying to claim territory. Some civilizations even accused us of creating the anomaly ourselves as a weapon. He walked to a window overlooking the damaged structures outside. So we made a choice. We would guard the barrier ourselves. We wouldn't risk anyone else. We wouldn't force other species to believe us or help us. It was our mistake, our responsibility. We would pay the price. But now I'm failing, his voice cracked slightly. The last human, unable to keep humanity's final promise. So I broke our silence. I sent out the distress call, knowing it would reveal our location, our failure, everything. Because the alternative, letting that thing escape, is worse than any shame we might feel. Vexana made her decision instantly. Dr. Webb, I need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. This isn't just humanity's problem anymore. This is everyone's problem. Marcus nodded slowly, and for the first time since they'd arrived, Vexana saw something like hope in his ancient eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for believing me. As Vexana returned to her ship to make the most important communication of her career, she couldn't help but wonder, how many other secrets were hidden in the dark spaces between the stars? And how many other species had sacrificed everything to keep the galaxy safe? The answer to those questions would have to wait. Right now, they had a barrier to repair and an entity to contain. And for the first time in 400 years, Marcus Webb wouldn't have to face that task alone, the Council's awakening. The meeting that shook the galaxy. The Galactic Council's emergency session was the largest gathering in recorded history. Every member civilization sent their highest representatives. Even species that rarely participated in council affairs sent delegations. Vexana's initial report had been met with skepticism, but her evidence, sensor readings, recordings of the anomaly's effects, and Marcus Webb's testimony, was impossible to dismiss. Grand Arbiter Solens, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, called the session to order. We have reviewed the data provided by Captain Vexana. If accurate, we face an existential threat unlike any in galactic history. Dr. Webb, you have been granted the right to address this council. Speak freely. Marcus stood before the assembled representatives, his 500-year-old body held upright by sheer determination and cybernetic reinforcement. He looked out at the sea of alien faces, some hostile, some curious, some terrified, and began to speak. I am human, he said simply. Perhaps the last of my kind. I stand before you not to ask for pity, but to ask for help. Not for humanity, we're already gone, but for all of you. For every species in this chamber and every world they call home. The proof in the ruins. The council demanded more evidence. Within weeks, scientific vessels from a dozen civilizations converged on the dark sector's boundaries. What they found shocked even the most skeptical delegations. The barrier that humanity had created was visible now, shimmering with unstable energy. Behind it, through specially shielded sensors, they could observe the regions where the entity had spread. Ships that had been caught in the anomaly floated in impossible geometries, their hulls twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Planets had been reduced to abstract mathematical concepts, neither solid nor gas, neither existing nor not existing. Dr. Kelris, a Varinian theoretical physicist, found himself working alongside Marcus in the human facility. The elderly scientist had initially doubted Marcus's story, but seeing the anomaly with his own eyes had changed everything. This is beyond our current understanding of physics, Kelris admitted, his scales shifting to a color indicating deep concern. How did your people even begin to contain something like this? Marcus pulled up holographic displays showing humanity's research. We didn't understand it either. But we learned to recognize its patterns. Think of it less as a physical entity and more as a syntax error in reality's programming. It doesn't follow our rules because it exists outside them. The barrier works because it creates a region of constantly fluctuating spacetime that the entity can't navigate through. It's not a wall, it's chaos that even chaos can't cross. The weight of history. As research teams worked frantically to understand and reinforce the barrier, Marcus found himself becoming an unexpected figure of fascination. Journalists from across the galaxy wanted to interview him. Scientists sought his knowledge. Young beings looked at him with awe, this ancient guardian who had stood watch for centuries. But it was a conversation with a young Kellian researcher named Thera that affected Marcus most deeply. She found him one evening, standing alone in one of the facility's observation domes, staring out at the stars. Dr. Webb, she began hesitantly, may I ask you something personal? Marcus nodded, not taking his eyes from the stars. Don't you hate us? The rest of the galaxy, I mean. Your people tried to warn us. We didn't listen. You sacrificed everything while we went on with our lives, completely unaware. Don't you resent that? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but firm. No. I don't hate you. None of us did. You see, Thera, my people learned something important during our time among the stars. We learned that the universe is vast and cold and often cruel. But sapient life, consciousness itself, is the universe's way of fighting back against that darkness. Every civilization, every species that reaches for the stars, is a victory against entropy and meaninglessness. He finally turned to look at her. Why would I hate you for living? For building civilizations and creating art and falling in love and raising children? That's exactly what we were protecting. The right of all species to exist, to thrive, to reach their potential. We didn't sacrifice ourselves because we were noble or heroic. We did it because we understood that life, all life, is precious and worth defending. The Great Convergence. As weeks turned into months, something unprecedented began to happen. The Galactic Council, normally fractious and slow to act, united with a speed and purpose that surprised even its oldest members. Resources poured into the Dark Sector project. Engineers, scientists, and technicians from every major civilization worked together, combining their knowledge and technology. The Varinians contributed their mastery of energy manipulation. The Kellians provided advanced sensor technology. The Crystalline Collective shared their understanding of higher-dimensional mathematics. Species that had been rivals for centuries worked side by side, united by a common purpose. Marcus found himself at the center of it all, the keeper of humanity's knowledge and the bridge between the past and the future. He worked tirelessly, often forgetting to rest until his cybernetic systems forced him into dormancy. But for the first time in 400 years, he wasn't alone. The new Guardians. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Thera, the young researcher who had spoken with Marcus, approached him with an excited gleam in her 6 eyes. "Dr. Webb, I think I've found a solution. Not a perfect one, but better than what we have now." She pulled up a complex series of calculations. Instead of relying on failing generators, what if we created a living barrier? A network of ships and stations, maintained by rotating crews from all council species. Not a quarantine, but an active guardianship. Marcus studied the proposal, his ancient mind still sharp despite his body's age. "It would work," he said slowly. "But it would require a permanent commitment from the entire galaxy. Generations of guardians, watching, maintaining, never able to fully relax their vigilance." "Yes," Thera agreed. "Just as you've done. But not alone. Never alone again. The legacy preserved." The proposal was presented to the Galactic Council and passed unanimously. The Guardian Fleet was established, a multi-species force dedicated to maintaining the barrier and studying the anomaly safely. The human facility was expanded and modernized, transformed from a lonely outpost into a thriving research center. Marcus was offered the position of Chief Guardian, a role he accepted with humility. But he also insisted on something else, a memorial. In orbit around the facility's moon, they built a monument. It was a simple structure, a ring of metal containing the names of every human who had died in the evacuation or the detonation. Millions of names, each one representing a life sacrificed to keep the galaxy safe. At the dedication ceremony, Marcus stood before the assembled delegates and spoke his final words as the last human. "My people are gone," he said, his voice carrying across the communication channels to every corner of the galaxy. "But their sacrifice was not in vain. You all stand here today because humans you never met chose to stand between you and darkness. Remember them. Honor them. But more importantly, learn from them." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces from 1,000 different worlds. "Learn that we are all guardians. Every species, every individual, has a responsibility to protect not just their own kind, but all life. The universe is vast and full of wonders, but it's also full of dangers. We must face those dangers together." A new dawn. Years passed. The Guardian Fleet grew in strength and capability. The barrier was reinforced with new technology. The anomaly was studied intensively, though it remained as mysterious as ever. And Marcus Webb, the last human, continued his watch. But he was no longer alone. Around him worked beings from dozens of species, all united in their mission. They called themselves the Silence Keepers, guardians of the barrier and inheritors of humanity's legacy. One day, Thera, now a senior scientist, found Marcus in his quarters. He was old now, even by his enhanced standards. His cybernetics were failing, his cloned organs reaching the end of their useful life. They both knew his time was short. "The barrier is stable," Thera reported, sitting beside him. "The new reinforcements are exceeding expectations. The galaxy is safe." Marcus smiled, a gesture she had learned to recognize as expressing contentment. Good. That's good. Then I can rest. Your people would be proud of you, Thera said softly. You kept humanity's promise. No, Marcus replied, his voice weak but certain. We kept it together. Humanity made the sacrifice, but it took all of us, all species, working together, to make it meaningful. That's the real legacy. Not just the sacrifice, but the unity it inspired. The final watch. Marcus Webb died peacefully in his sleep 3 days later, surrounded by friends from a dozen different worlds. The news spread across the galaxy like a wave, and beings of every species mourned the passing of the last human. But they also celebrated. Because Marcus had not died in vain, and humanity had not sacrificed itself in vain. The Silence Keepers continued their watch, stronger than ever. And across the galaxy, species that had once been isolated or antagonistic now worked together, inspired by the example of a people who had given everything to protect those they had never met. The memorial ring around the facility's moon was updated. One final name was added to the list of humans who had given their lives for the galaxy, Dr. Marcus Webb, the last guardian, the keeper of promises. And in the dark spaces between the stars, the barrier held firm, maintained not by one lonely human, but by thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. The entity remained contained, its threat neutralized by the cooperation of civilizations united in purpose. Humanity was gone, but their legacy lived on, not in monuments or records, but in the very fabric of galactic civilization. They had taught the universe a simple lesson, that the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. And in that unity, in that shared commitment to protect all life, humanity had achieved a form of immortality. They lived on in every guardian who stood watch, in every scientist who studied the barrier, in every being who looked at the stars and remembered that we are all responsible for each other. The silence was kept. The promise was honored. And the galaxy, united as never before, faced the future together.